Thank you so much for coming bright and early to the starting session. I don't know whether it's a great thing we have the first session or slightly not so great thing, but we have the first session, so it must be wonderful. So as you can see, we're going to talk today about overview of students who want to study an English taught degree in continental Europe. Probably worth clarifying, we're not going to necessarily touch on the United Kingdom as part of that. It's a separate system, it works in quite different ways, so we're going to focus on the continent of Europe and university options that are taught entirely through the medium of English. So we're going to sort of split this up into three sections of our presentation and hopefully keep it quite informal and leave some time at the end for lots of questions. Anything you might want to ask about studying in Europe, from what may feel like a very basic question to quite complicated questions and anything in between. Our objectives today are to cover three things. Firstly, we want to talk about the fact that getting over that hurdle intellectually, quite often for a lot of students, that just because you want to study a degree taught in English, you don't necessarily have to go to a country where English is the most commonly spoken language. There are huge numbers of opportunities all over the world, but a lot in Europe particularly, where you can study a degree through the medium of English in a country which is not actually a dominantly English-speaking country. However, coming with that, there are a number of challenges. So studying in one language while the country that university is based in speaks another language has some challenges, has some opportunities as well, but some challenges that we think it's important for counsellors in the room to understand when you have a student who might express an interest in studying one of the universities in Europe that teach in English. And joined by two very experienced university representatives who are going to talk about some of the particular pathways that they end up talking to students about when they end up having to deal with students who apply to their universities. Thought at a very basic level, we would put a map of Europe, just so you can see what we're talking about. Predominantly, we're going to be focusing on the western side of Europe because that is where most of these opportunities are. But as you'll see later, there are a huge number of English-speaking degrees taught in other parts of Europe as well. So as a sort of an introduction, we should probably introduce ourselves. So my name is David Hawkins. I'm an independent accredited college counsellor based in the United Kingdom. I work with students all over the world making university applications to the UK, to the USA, to Canada, and increasingly to study in Europe. I'm very fortunate to have a very good relationship with the European Universities Consortium, who represent a number of these universities, and that's sort of my angle I'm going to give on this. And I'll hand over to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Sheena Mehta. I'm here representing IE University, an international university in Spain. I'm also a committee member for IC3. So with my Indian roots, having studied Spanish myself, being born and brought up in the UK, it's quite important for me to share my own experience and how I've got here. So hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit of that. I just want to reiterate what David mentioned. We have lots of information. We might not have all of it, but we have a wealth of colleagues that we travel with. So if there's something specific that you want to know that we can't help with, please don't feel like you can't ask us or you can't ask us to follow up on it. We're here to make sure that we have your questions answered.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ikerne Aspilicueta. I come from EHL, so École Hôtelière de Lausanne, in Lausanne, Switzerland. I'm half Swiss and half Spanish. It doesn't really look like. I have been working at EHL for the last 13 years already, and for seven years I was a recruitment officer and I was in charge of India. So I've met a lot of Indian students who came to study in India. So if you have any questions concerning the challenges they might have faces, the opportunities, etc., so you're very welcome to ask all the questions you want at the end of the session. Thank you.
Great. So I thought I'd start with just a little bit of a poll, try and wake people up a little bit, and just ask a couple of questions. So could you raise your hand if you have ever had a student from your school apply to one of these English taught programs in Europe? Okay, a good number. Fantastic. Thank you. How many of you think you probably should have more students apply to some of these programs? Great answer. Fantastic. So we're hopefully going to give you the information that will cover these kind of things, but please do, if you have any questions that occur to you as we come along, please make a note of them. We're going to leave a good chunk of time at the end to answer these questions. I notice also we have colleagues in the room who also represent other European universities who may also be able to chip in with something. We are going to have to keep things quite general. We're talking about a large area with some nuances within that, which once you delve into this can become quite important, but we'll try and stay quite general to start with. So these are the three areas we're going to touch on. First of all, why, in a general sense, consider English taught degrees in Europe? What are the benefits, what opportunities do you get from this general sense of coming to Europe to study in English? Then more specifically, we're going to look into three different examples, the two countries and two universities represented by my colleagues, and I'll also touch on a third option, and then delve into some of these challenges that students need to be aware of, and if we're going to be effective counselling students, to really give them that information that actually, okay, you've got this idea, you want to look at Spain or Switzerland or somewhere, what questions do you need to ask, what things do you need to be aware of, and go from there. So to start off with, we will go with why consider studying an English taught degree in Europe. Okay, so this is the standard European Universities Consortium presentation. So a question for you, where was the first university in the world located? I'm going to add a little thing, because I did a little bit of touristy stuff yesterday. I went to the Swami Narayan temple and went to the lovely thing and realised that actually it may not be the first university in the world that's located. But you take out the fact that we're sitting in India now, and maybe actually I need to update this presentation. Where was the first university in the world located? Anyone want to guess what the European Universities Consortium may be saying? Bologna. So I think the clarification is the oldest continually operating university is certainly in Bologna. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so where is the largest common higher education area in the world? The title of the presentation should be a complete giveaway, but yes, it is Europe. Yeah. Do you know how many countries make up the European higher education space? Any ideas? Bridget? No? Anyone? A number of countries who are working together, working at a governmental level to bring up education, to have common goals, common parts of their syllabus. How many countries would make up the European higher education space? Any ideas? You've got multiple choice, 4 options. So it's going to be around there. It's a good way of thinking about it. It's 48 countries. Now, what does that actually mean? Here you can see all of the members, but it's not necessary for these countries to be part of the European Union to be part of the European higher education space. That's an important point to remember. 48 countries. You can see here ministries of education, international organizations who sit down together and say, well, how are we going to bring up the level of education so that it's continuous, it's standardized, it's great education. It also means that if you want to study in one country, travel to another country, you're able to do that because the syllabus is recognized. The 3-cycle system, doing a bachelor's program, doing a master's program, and doing a doctorate, and making sure that every university has a certain level, which means not only can you study in one country, travel and do a transfer to another country, in a university in another country, but you can then go on to do another master's program, and that degree is recognized. It makes sense whether you've done it in Spain, whether you've taken the degree in France, whether you're going on to do a program in Croatia. That degree is recognized. In terms of cultural diversity, I'm using myself here as an example. My roots are from India. I was born in Manchester in the UK. I went on holiday with my parents, and we went to Spain. And I said, Mom, what is that language? It sounds wonderful. It almost sounds like a song with the intonation going up and down, up and down. I have no idea what they're saying, but it sounds wonderful. She said, well, maybe that's something you think about for school. Take some Spanish classes. And it was just the intrigue of that Spanish that actually then led me on to take it as an A-level at high school and then go on to read it at university. It meant that when I went to Spain, I had a whole new community that I could communicate with, that I could make friends with, that I could make lifelong friends with. It also meant that the people who were there talking Spanish were also being able to talk to me in a common ground and live in that country, learn about different people, different languages while we were in Spain too. It also meant for me to go, once I finished my degree in Leeds, spending a year in Spain, when I felt that I wanted to go and work in Spain and push my Spanish and make sure I got to a level where I could really speak fluent Spanish, I could go and work in Spain. I could go there without needing to take out a visa, without needing to get out big paperwork, go through a whole process. I could do that very easily, and that's what the European higher education also enables. Transferable credits, that actually means that students can actually start a degree in one of the countries we mentioned, and they can transfer to another country. If for any reason they want to get experience from another country, they want to travel abroad, if they want to make sure that or maybe change their minds about the country they want to study, they can do that very easily.
Thank you. So Europe, how many of you have been to Europe? Okay, so a big majority. So you are a little bit aware. Good. So Europe is very diverse. I mean, you have a diversity of people. It's very rare to have someone 100% Spanish, 100% Swiss. Most of us have one of our parents, or at least one of our grandparents, who comes from another country. Most of us. Diversity of people. I mean, usually, but if I'm half Spanish, I should look a little bit more brown. But I mean, you have very different type of look in Europe. Then you have diversity in food. So once of you who have been in Europe, I'm sure you have eaten a nice tapas in España, nice pasta in Rome, maybe a fondue in Switzerland. So we have really a diverse gastronomy. French gastronomy, it's very well known in all over the world as well. We have landscape. I mean, we had the chance in Europe to have 4 different seasons, very clear season. And I remember myself when I went to Australia for 1 year. And I said, I loved Australia, this is beautiful, but I missed the season. You know, I love being cold in the winter. I love the fall when everything, all the forest is becoming reddish and brown. And then in the summer, we go to swim. We have a different way of living. I mean, in the summer, it's daylight until 10 p.m. We do barbecues, we are outside. And then in the summer, 5 p.m., it's night. We remain more cozy at home. So there is no routine. For each season, there are other activities. In terms of students as well, they go out a little bit more in the summer. They do outside sports. Then in the winter, it's more inside. So you always look forward for something different. There is a diversity in architecture as well. I mean, I live in Switzerland. I drive 20 minutes from where I live. So in Delhi, 20 minutes, you are not at the end of the street. So I drive 20 minutes, and the language is different. The food is different. The houses are different. So in terms of culture, it's very, very rich. Of course, Europe gives you the opportunity. You can have a breakfast in Geneva, then lunch in London, and you have a nice tapas on the beach in Barcelona for dinner. So this is absolutely possible in Europe. In 1 hour flight, you can be more or less everywhere. So for example, for Indian students, if they get a Schengen visa, they allow them to go every weekend in another country of Europe. A lot of history, of course. I mean, Italy, Spain, France. It's very interesting in terms of the history and culture. Of course, a possibility to do exchange in other countries, in other language, internships as well. Every country have its specificities, so it could be interesting to do a certain type of internship in certain countries. For example, Switzerland, we are quite advanced in pharmaceutical, so we do have a lot of students who comes to study from pharmaceutical in Switzerland. With the Bologna process, we have a high quality standard of education and internationally recognized. So with the European system, most of the universities are also accredited by the NIASC, which is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which gives you an American accreditation and covers the world. So do you remember how many countries are part of the Bologna process? See if you are following, it's still early morning. 48, good. So out of this 48, half of them, so 24 countries, have programs taught in English. So you have the list here of all the countries where students could go and study in English, because obviously every single country, we do offer our studies in the language of the country. So for example, Spain, I mean, most of the university will offer a degree in Spanish, and some university will offer the degree in English as well. In Spain, for example, there's even a region in Spain, Barcelona, where they do offer, for example, in Catalan. So the studies are specifically in the language of the region. But in all of these countries, English programs are possible. So as I come from Switzerland, I'm going to present a little bit more this country. So what do you know about Switzerland? Chocolate, yes. Snow. Watches. Yes. Cheese. Banks. Yes. Swiss knights, correct? Good. So, the Alps? What did you say?
Roger Federer.
Ah, Roger Federer, good. Bollywood, yes. Okay, so that's already, there are quite good reasons to go and visit or study in Switzerland. But Switzerland is not only this. There are things that you may not know about Switzerland. So Switzerland is 8.5 million people. New Delhi is about 18, I guess. So it's small. How many times India is bigger than Switzerland, you think?
Close to 100.
Mm-hmm. So 78 times. So India is 78 times bigger than Switzerland. So it is a tiny country. However, how many national languages do we have? Nearly 4. So we have the French, German, Italian, and then I think it's 2% of the population speaks this language, is Romanche. Romanche is basically the Swiss language. Okay. So 4 different countries, 4 different culture, 8 million people only. We are one of the most innovative countries in the world. For example, we are ranked highest since 2013 by the Global Innovation Index as the most innovative country. It means that gives place for creativity, for technology. I mean, students can have the possibility to become entrepreneur. We do open more than 40,000 startups every year. So it can seem like a very traditional country, but on another side, we have roots, but we want to balance with innovation and technology as well. And a lot of universities in Switzerland and in Europe have these both sides, traditions and innovation. We do invest a lot in research and development. So for students who would be interested in doing research in the medical fields, in the pharmaceutical field, Switzerland could be a nice destination as well. So Switzerland, we do offer degrees in our languages, of course, so French, Italian, and German, depending where you are in the country, and then some in English. I mean, there is no rules. Sometimes a public university could offer programs in English, sometimes a private university, applied sciences or research university. Some do, some don't. There's no rules. I mean, this you can ask her or do a little bit of some research. Usually, the tuition fees are the same for Swiss and international students. Again, this is not a rule. Not every institution is like this. It's a bit, the answer usually, it won't really help, but usually we say it depends. I mean, it's really on a case-by-case basis. Cost of living, well, in terms of marketing, maybe this is not the best argument because Switzerland is quite expensive. However, you have a quality of life. It's very safe, a lot of students, a lot of culture. But this is more or less approximately the cost of living. There is a clear distinction between University of Applied Sciences and Research University. So I will speak about this a bit further on, but this is very important to analyze for you students what type of university they are a better fit. And then again, there's not like a common application that you could say, okay, I'm going to apply to Switzerland, and I send one application to all universities. It doesn't work like this. Every single university has its own admissions process, selection process. So it's really on a case-by-case basis. And this is where we are, what we are here from. So do not hesitate if you have any questions to contact us, even if it's not for our university, but any university in Europe, we will be very happy to help you with the process. So a few words about EHL. So it was founded in 1893. So that makes EHL one of the oldest hospitality management school in the world. Maybe India had one before. That's possible. But I mean, in terms of reputation and knowledge, since 1893, we are quite well known. We are like a family campus university. I mean, we have been growing since the last 10 years, but 2,700 students, it's still small compared like to big, for example, US campus, etc. So it means that the teachers, they know the student, classes are not too big, there's really like a one-to-one coaching, and students, they know each other. There's a lot of academic life, but there's a lot of social life as well, which is important. I mean, when you are a university student, both sides are quite important. So we do have a lot of committees that can be very serious, such as leadership committees, cultural social responsibility, etc. Or it can be very fun committees, sports, wine tasting, food committee, etc. But these committees are important as well because you acquire different competences than in a class. We are very specialized, so we do hospitality management. So do you have an idea, if you study hospitality management, what kind of career you can have afterwards? Any ideas?
Hotels, travel.
You can work in hotels, yes. Travel industry, airlines, tourism, events, accounting, yeah. So very good. I'm very proud because usually the answer I have is like, you can become a chef or you can become a waiter. So no, if you study hospitality management, you could be able to cook, but you cannot really be a chef. To give you just an idea, 60% of the students finishing a hospitality management degree have never worked in a hotel or in a restaurant, 60%. So it's all about business, but more service-oriented. We do offer bachelor's, master's, online programs, certificate programs as well. And our campus is just outside Lausanne. So Lausanne is a big city, 100,000 people. So for Switzerland, it's big. So it's quite easy to commute by public transport. It's a city full of students, a lot of culture, museum, restaurant, and again, it's very safe. So that's important. When I was recruiting in India, it's true that one of the unique selling point of most of the country of Europe is the safety of our countries. That's it.
Okay, so Spain. Spain is a wondrous place. It's a special place. You can spend an hour going to the mountains and ski and spend another hour in another direction and be on the beach. It's got that variety. I kind of found it by accident. It was part of my degree. I had to spend some time in Spain. And I actually ended up falling in love with the country so much that I moved over there and ended up living there for 5 years. In terms of architecture, in terms of the music, in terms of the food and the dance and the culture and the architecture, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you know, with Spain, it's a country that has the huge variety of universities as well. It has the public local universities that will teach everything in Spanish. And for some of my friends who were at a level where they wanted to be surrounded and immersed in a very Spanish-speaking environment, that would have been perfect for them. On the other side, we will have private universities that will only teach degrees in English. So it really depends on whether your students might be looking for a university where they can take a class in Spanish, whether they can start off in English, boost up their Spanish and finish in Spanish, or actually if they're coming there without any prior knowledge of any Spanish, which is fine. Students don't need to know a word of Spanish to be able to study in Spain, and that's quite often the case in a lot of the countries that we've mentioned. You can arrive there with the intention of studying in English, but making sure that by the time you leave, you can have a really great conversation in the local language of the country that you've been in. So 2/3 of the universities are state-run. So you can see fees that will start from 1,000, going all the way up to 25,000. We use the euro. However, we do have a lot of universities that will offer scholarships as well. We keep talking about how important it is for students to have this international experience, to go to Spain and enjoy Spain and take away everything that Spain has. But a lot of the countries that we're mentioning, it's very important for us as well to have Indians and Sri Lankans and all of this diversity come to Spain and allow their ideas and opinions to then leave a mark in Spain as well. Same thing that I did. I was an Indian talking Spanish and nobody understood why. It was so curious. Being a vegetarian in Spain for many, many years, I used to be asked, well, why are you a vegetarian? You mean you can't eat jamón serrano? Why would you deprive yourself of that wonderful experience? Whereas now, veganism, vegetarianism, restaurants that are fully vegetarian are now something you can find in Spain. And that's a long time coming. But because there is movement, because people are arriving, they're saying, well, actually, I'm a bit different to what you have here. I need to be catered for, and I'm loving this country, and I'll fall in love with it and work here and study here, but I need you to help me get there. Spain does offer official degrees as well as unofficial degrees. Now, what that could mean is that a university might be accredited by another university outside of the country. It could mean that they're offering universities that are accredited by an official university, or it could mean that they are official through the Ministry of Education. So don't be afraid when you're meeting universities to ask, are you accredited? And understand what that means. They are official through the Bologna process. So again, the European transfer credit system that we mentioned, you can study in Spain and have exactly the same title as you would as the UK, as another country, and be able to use that degree in another country and say, well, I've studied an official degree. I'd like to now access a master's program with you. We do follow a 4-year bachelor in Spain, followed by a 1-year master's program. But the way that can be done is, again, very different. We, at my university at IE, we're an international university. So yes, we're based in Spain, but even when we're teaching our law programs, we're teaching international comparative law. We've just had a law program that has been approved by the Bar Council here in India. So Indian students can actually come to Spain, study a full degree, and they will be advocates here in India. They're studying alongside students who will be able to go to Northwestern and study the US track. They could go to the University of Law and study a UK track. Now, it's up to students where they might want to go, but they are surrounded by other students who are wanting to go to different countries, work at a global level. They might have studied in Spain. They might be learning some Spanish coming in from another country, but they're in a classroom where they're surrounded by people who are coming from Italy and Japan and Germany, and being able to say, well, actually, in my country, what you're doing is great, but in my country, that wouldn't be allowed. You'd be thrown in jail if you did that in my country. So that diversity, to be able to just be in that classroom and say, I might be looking to go back to my home country or a country that I'm a fan of, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you only have to be surrounded by those who've got the same opinion. So IE University, the university I represent, it's an international university in Spain. We teach all of our degrees in English. However, students have the opportunity to learn Spanish while they're studying with us. They get to travel abroad on exchange, they get to do internships, and they're surrounded by students from 168 different nationalities. So we might be in Spain, but we're an international university that feels like a global village almost. We have 2 campuses, one in Segovia and one in Madrid, and we're going back to what again I touched on. It really depends on what your students are looking for. Are they looking to be in a big city? Would they prefer to be in a smaller town? Well, actually, in one country, you might find both of those opportunities. Being able to, one of the reasons that our president at IE chose to found the university and have it in Spain is you still hear a very pure pure Castilian Spanish. You might be on campus speaking English to all of your teachers, to all of your fellow classmates, but the second you step off campus, you will be forced to speak some Spanish and learn some Spanish. The only place at a number of universities in Spain where you might have only Spanish-speaking staff is in the cafeteria. You're forced to order your meal. You might have it in English and you might have it in Spanish, but push yourself to do that. Push yourself to order a meal in Spanish so that the second you step off campus, you start building your confidence. But we've also got students who, towards the end of their degree, their third year and their fourth year, they're doing internships in Spanish. They're sitting in meetings, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but that's where it becomes possible. The way that it works with many universities, with all universities in Spain, is you apply directly through to the university. You would go onto their website, you would have an online application. With some universities, including IE, we now appear on the Common App. So you can submit an application through the Common App. The majority of universities will ask our students for an interview. We get to meet and get to know many students on a piece of paper, but it's quite important for us to know what will our students be bringing to our university, as well as can they cope with the course content that we have. We really want to know their personalities before we make any decisions.
Okay, as you will hear, I'm not Dutch. I can say goedendag. And I lived in Belgium for a number of years, working as a counsellor at the international school in Brussels, so I lived in the Flemish area. But the Netherlands, for those who've been in college counselling for a number of years, will have suddenly, over the last 5 years, seen the Netherlands track up and up and up on quite an astronomical level as a destination for students who want an English-speaking education. And actually, for someone who spent a lot of time in the Netherlands and, say, lived in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, the Netherlands is, to all intents and purposes, an English-speaking country. There was a survey done, I think, 3 years ago of European Union member countries, and the Netherlands actually beats the UK and Ireland as having a higher percentage of people who speak English as a first or second language than those countries did. Almost everybody in the Netherlands will speak Dutch as a second language, and actually some of the situations in the UK and the Ireland, that's not necessarily the case. So it's a really extraordinary higher education destination for people to think about, and I know there are some Dutch universities attending IC3 as well this year. So I wanted to include it and just give an overview of some of the things to be aware of. Again, I'm just going to touch on this difference between research and university applied sciences, which is quite important, but there are 13 public research universities and around 45 university applied sciences, not many private options in the Netherlands. Over 300 English taught courses available, and it's every year, new courses being launched, giving students all sorts of opportunities. I've kept the fees here in euros because there's some changes going on in the Dutch government at the moment. For example, they very recently just voted in that actually, as of this year just about to start, the first year tuition fee for an EU student, and that's EU passport, not EU resident, also European Economic Area passport. So if you've got students at your schools who have a passport from Switzerland or from Germany or the Netherlands, they can access this. That first year fee is actually half the €2,000 now. The non-EU fee is a little bit higher. The cost of living is very reasonable in the Netherlands as well, a very cheap country to live. Deadlines are there as well, but a crucial thing to bear in mind, something we keep coming back to, is no centralised application system. There is a thing called StudyLink, and I will touch on that just slightly because it's important to understand how students can sometimes get themselves into slight difficulties. As a starting point for any of your students who are looking at applying to a university in the Netherlands, contact the university first before you do anything. You can go into StudyLink and think you've applied for something, and you haven't necessarily done so. And every year there are students who are in difficult situations who will contact a university and say, well, I hold an offer from you. It says on StudyLink, and that's the first the university's heard of it. Different universities will run that process in different ways. They may, once you've made contact, say, we actually need you to go to StudyLink, and then we will contact you for an application process. Or they'll say, run through our application process, and then we'll tell you to go into StudyLink. But there's no centralised application system is something really important to bear in mind. As someone I say, spend a lot of time in this part of the world. It's an extraordinarily powerful educational destination to go into. Unlike Switzerland and unlike in Spain, you don't have the same geographic diversity. It's a very flat country. It's a very under sea level country. But the access you get both through the train network into Germany, into Belgium, into France, up into Scandinavia, Amsterdam Schiphol is a major airport hub. Students who are going to the Netherlands aren't staying in the Netherlands for a huge period of time. They're traveling all over the place, and the work that's been done by Dutch universities in building this international network is extraordinary. For, say, 13 public research universities, you will go to University of Utrecht, University of Maastricht, Erasmus University Rotterdam, and others, and meet students from all around the world who are coming to the Netherlands to get this high-quality English language education, and then are going on to equally impressive master's destinations afterwards as well. So it's something really that's up and coming. I don't want to spend more time talking about it because I know there are Dutch colleagues at IC3. So having covered some examples, and I say there are so many more examples, we could have spent 4 or 5 hours going through every single country, but picked 3 that we thought were illustrative. To try and delve into the third element of this presentation now and to touch on actually what are some of the counselling challenges that you might want to be aware of when you're working with students who come into your office and say, hey, I want to go to Europe. And actually, what are some of the opportunities that you might be able to show to some of your students to say, have you considered finding out more about university in Europe? So the counselling challenge is just to cover some of the basics. It is a focused degree. And for those of you who have students who might be in an IB system or might be in an American-style system who are looking to go to a major minor or study electives or do these kind of things, typically speaking, the European model is similar to the UK model. You apply to study one subject, and that is what you are going to study. There are some liberal arts courses. The Netherlands has a very strong suite of liberal arts colleges called university colleges, and there are other places. But across these 24 countries, it's very much a focused degree in a similar way as a UK degree, typically speaking, because in a lot of countries it's a 3-year honours degree. Important to bear in mind is the housing situation can be very different to a lot of European universities, particularly those public government-funded universities. This time of year, there's also situations where a lot of students going to the Netherlands haven't quite realised that they're expected to, in many cases, find their own accommodation. Because the quality of a lot of European public universities in Belgium, the Netherlands, and France and Germany is equally good, you don't kind of have this same idea that people from one town will travel to the other end of the country to go to university. A lot of people go to university in the same locality in which they went to high school, in which they grew up. So they might go and inherit a student house that friends from their high school have just left. They may go with a group of friends from their football club or their field hockey club and go and have a student house together. So housing situation can be very different. A lot of the public universities in Europe actually don't own any accommodation at all. With this attempt to be symbiotic, the Bologna process, the Erasmus process, it is really important that students are aware of the ability they have to transfer things. Erasmus is a really wonderful opportunity. It's governed by the European Union, but includes a lot of countries outside the EU, like Turkey and some North African countries, and it's a really strong exchange program. So students can go into the Erasmus program and find an exchange at a university in a different country that isn't actually partnered with their university. So you can go to a public university in Germany and do an Erasmus exchange to a university in Morocco. And that's a program that's governed at a higher level, at a governmental level. Again, we keep saying this applied sciences research universities, and I will leave to Kernan to come to that, but that is a really important nuance for students to understand how that works in quite a different way. To understand whether the degree is a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree, depending on the country and depending on the nuance of how that degree is being offered. The centralized application system, as we've touched on, again, to understand that places like the UK, places like Sweden do run everything through one portal, but as I've mentioned with StudyLink, colleagues have mentioned that other countries expect you to apply it, and I haven't forgotten this getting in versus staying in, but it's an important bit to touch on as well. In a lot of European countries, they're running a secondary education system which is putting students onto different pathways from age 12, age 13 or 14. So they're tracking towards a traditional academic curriculum, or they're tracking towards a technical curriculum, or a vocational curriculum, or more specialised arts and music curriculum. And students who go through those high school curriculum are given automatically a pathway onto the higher education version of that. So I use the Netherlands as an example. If you're going into what's called the VWO, the VWO curriculum, if you gain that diploma when you leave high school, you can automatically go to university. And when that translates to an IB curriculum, an A-level curriculum, an AP curriculum, you can look at it and say, well, actually, the entry requirements seem quite low. This is a top 200 university in the world, and actually, what they're asking me to do isn't very much. There is this thing in a lot of European countries of selection after the gate. So to get in and have a go at university, you need a minimal level of academic qualification. But to stay in, you have to hit the mark by the end of that first year. And that is a really important nuance to understand of counselling students, that actually just because it means you can get in with these grades doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be enough to be successful. It's because university, as we know, is different to high school. It's because a lot of these universities are very heavily subsidised by taxpayers, and therefore students have a right to have an access to university. And also because we know students change. And actually, you may not have the grades necessarily to access medicine, but have a go at medical school in Belgium, knowing that it may not work out for you and you may have to leave after that first year and come back and have a look at biomedical sciences. You want to apply for engineering and you give it a go, but you realise 6 months in it's not actually working out and you'll come back and do product design. And that's really important for counsellors in the room to understand, that just because you get into a European university, if they have this selection after the gate at the end of the first year, it's really important you have to get that mark in those first year exams. Okay, we keep to mention this, we'll get into it now. Applied sciences or research?
Okay. How many of you are aware of what is an applied science university versus research university? Okay. So basically, applied science university is really learning by doing. It's really for two types of students, and that's important for you because you will be advising your students, and there are certain types of students who are more fit for research university and more for applied science. So basically, there are subjects that are given in one or other, and subjects who are given in both. If you want to study law or medicine, for example, it has to be research university. You have no choice. If you want to study nursery, it's applied science. If you want to study business, you can do both. So how to choose, research or applied science? So basically, if you study business in an applied science university, you will do internships. You will have teachers that will come from the industry. Some teachers who are academic and some teachers who are from the industry. You will learn, you will have experience in companies, you will do a lot of a project that are very close to reality. If you do business in an academic university, you will do research. You will have PhD teachers, etc. So do you get the feeling of what is what? So students who have to learning by doing and students who are more research-oriented, this is where you should advise your students to go. In terms of selection, most of the high school diploma that are eligible for a research university are okay for applied science university. And for applied science university, we have some tracks in Europe that are more professional that can give the eligibility to this kind of universities as well. You will have the opportunity to ask questions in case at the end.
Okay, another aspect to bear in mind for counsellors in the room, and particularly as we mentioned that there are some universities, and we've mentioned EHL and IE, where almost everything is in English. There are some universities in Europe where they're only offering that one program in English. There are also options where the university is a comprehensive university where it's offering degrees across the whole range of academic subject areas. It's offering engineering and humanities and sciences and social sciences and everything. Or it's a university that's only offering one subject. It's only offering business. It's only offering technology. So to understand the differences as to what kind of experience a student might have, are you going to an institution that is only undergraduate focused? Or actually the vast majority of students at that university are going to be coming out of high school, aged 18 or 19, are going to be of that age? Or are you going to a university that actually most of the students are postgraduates? There's a lot of business schools in Europe where actually most of what they're doing is Masters in Management, is MBAs, executive education things, and they have a Bachelor of Business Administration. Now, you go to a university where there's 15, 20, 30 degrees in English, and there's a couple of hundreds, maybe 1,000, 2,000 students of an undergraduate level. That's a very different social life in terms of clubs and meeting people and the way you will conduct yourself. They're going to a place where maybe there's 100 of you on that BBA program in your year, and there's 1,000 people and they're executives. They're in their late 20s, they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s. That's going to have a very different focus as to what you want. No right or wrong in here, but it's about that fit for a student. Are you going to go to a university that is providing a lot of social activities for students because they've got a huge range of students, and actually they have a soccer team, they have a cricket team, they have wine tasting, they have international student affairs, or is it you're expected to go on your own? And again, with this idea of the accommodation, is the university having all these kind of things where the accommodation is all there, where they have either their own halls of residence or they have contacts with halls of residence, they have an office that helps you find private accommodation? Or is it a university, again, where they're only having this one or maybe two programs in English, or it's a university where most people are staying in hotels, they're flying in for a 4-week program, flying out again, and it's a different kind of thing in there. Not all European universities are going to be the same, and once your students has identified Europe as an area to look at, for them to delve into some of these kind of ideas, do you want a university that's really, really focused? Are you going to go and study a Bachelor of Business Administration at a European business school where the expectation is you're in a suit most days? Or actually, you're going to want someone who's basically going to roll out of bed and get away with your pajamas almost being acceptable and having the sort of more traditional student experience. It's a really important counselling point to this, and I feel an awful lot of students really don't quite understand the difference between, I say, a comprehensive university offering lots of degrees and a very specialised institution that goes from there.
Okay, so covering kind of a little bit of what we have said, we realize the responsibility that's on you. I had no idea I could study my Spanish in Spain and do my business in English in Spain too. No counsellor came to was part of my school guidance. No universities came to my school. I had no idea. My Spanish could have been fluent years before it was if I knew that I could have done this kind of degree. So we realize the responsibility that's on you. But we're also, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say, it's your job as well to bug us. Ask us as many questions as you like. If I'm a university representing Spain, ask me about Germany. Ask me about Italy. If I don't know the question, we've got colleagues who we can point you in the right direction to. Ikerne, David as well. We're blessed in the sense that we have so many colleagues who can help with that. Going beyond the university, what we've just mentioned, and university administration, things about getting work permits, accommodation, does that help need to be in English? Does it need to be in the local language? That depends on the student. But there are opportunities that they can dip their feet in with before they consider an application. That could be a summer school. EHL, IE, many universities across the world have an opportunity for a summer school. You might not be interested in the country, but it's a great way of getting some experience. If they want to dip their feet in and say, well, actually, I'd love to go and see this university in action, but I'm not quite sure if it's a place for me, a country for me, a university for me, spending a week, 2 weeks, sometimes up to 6 or even 8 weeks, getting that real-life experience. Advisory boards, competitions. At IE, we do many events like this. We're inviting students from all over the world, advising us what they think is the future of education. They don't have to be interested in IE. Trips, if your school does languages and you're traveling abroad, if you are coming to Spain, reach out to us. We do campus tours. Lots of universities do master classes. Maybe your students want to meet fellow students who are in their second or third year and they want that connection. Ask us, we can help with that. Debate clubs, Model United Nations competing at an international level, that again can give real exposure for students. And as I said, my journey started with a family holiday, just learning some Spanish. It can be something as simple as that. So we can open up to questions, if that's okay. We don't have too long, so let's go ahead with the questions. Do you want to?
So, two questions. Really, the visa is an issue that we've suffered, especially with some of the Italian universities. There is a process of legalization with the IB, and they have to go to the Ministry of External Affairs for CBSE. I think I'm very loud. So, anyways. So the visa is an issue that I've encountered with a lot of students, and I'm sure a lot of people who've applied to some of the European universities have encountered that.
Sure.
It becomes a bit tricky. Parents cornering us from all angles that we don't know whether we are supposed to do the legalization or we have to write to IB. What is the process here? Same for CBSE. I come from a school which runs both roads.
Sure.
One is that and the stay back options.
Okay.
So there's obviously a difference between private and public in terms of legalisation and how that works.
Adding on to the question, within IB and A levels, I think that also is not, they also require them to send the documents earlier, recognized by the government, which takes longer. So
Sure.
lots of things,
Of course.
Yeah. So a student who's looking at a public university in any of these countries needs to understand that you are fitting into a system that is designed for the students in that country. And therefore, you happen to find some equivalency. And so the legalisation process is an important one. Certainly for students in the IB process, that is something that through IBIS you can put that process into. And from what I understand it, basically it's someone's job in Geneva to walk out with all the IB things and walk them to the appropriate embassy and get them stamped and moving on. It is complicated when you fit into timelines. My view as a counsellor is an awful lot of that is actually beholden on the student to understand those processes quite early on. In effect, if a student is going to go that far away from home, we should use that almost as a filtering process of counselling. If you're not able to actually contact the university, you've made contact with people in the admissions offices who can talk you through these processes, who will have dealt with students from these countries before, and say, look, this is what you need to do. Go back to your counsellor and say you need to tick this box on the IBIS, or you need to speak to your exam board for an A-level or CBSE, whoever it is, and get that process done. That is where this comprehensive versus specialised, public versus private thing comes in, because again, if it's a public university and they're only offering 1 or 2 programs in English, they're not going to have that same facility of supporting international students through this process as an IE or in the EHL or the Dutch universities or some of the other EUC members are going to have, because they're doing this all the time.
Yeah.
So that kind of process is important. The question about A-levels and IB is also gets to an equivalency program. As I mentioned, a lot of students are on a track through their own country's high school system, where if you meet those requirements, you automatically go to university. So the governments of those countries are equating non-domestic qualifications to that. So one of the big issues is Germany and Switzerland, where in effect A-level students, it's almost impossible to study enough subjects to be eligible for public universities in Germany and Switzerland. As an IB student and you're looking at Germany and Switzerland, students going into the IB program need to be counselled. If you're looking at Germany and Switzerland, you need to be taking subjects that they recognise as equivalent to a Swiss bac or an Abitur. So there's an awful lot of nuance into it. My view as a counsellor is that our job is to flag those issues up to students and say, if you're looking to these countries, you need to be aware of these kind of things. And then it's beholden on them a little bit more to go out and do those kind of things.
I agree with that. I think applying early is key. Sometimes even if you do it all right, just because things take so long, it means sometimes a perfect student for a perfect university doesn't always get there. However, one thing that I will say that it's becoming more and more common is international universities having local representatives, having local offices, and actually IE's representative for our India Mumbai office, she's actually sat just behind you. So we have local representatives here who can say, I've studied here, I live here, I know how the system works here. Let me talk you through this. Let me help you with that. Yes, the responsibility often does lie on the student, but making sure you get there early, making sure that everything, even planning with the hiccups that are coming through, call on us, but more and more people having local representatives spending more and more time there who go through this year in, year out. And because we've had the worst things happen, we have learned from that. So yes, again, feel free to reach out to us.
Plan early. What happens is the results come in.
Yeah.
So that's a catch. So we plan quite early. Students sit with admissions, but till you get your result, A-level comes in August. This one comes in.
I agree.
July.
I agree.
So that's where the catch is.
I agree.
It's a case of being aware of the systems, and it's also one of those things. I was working with a student this year who's looking at an international university in Catalonia. If you reverse it, you can work out which university it is. And the experience of trying to deal with that university about these kind of issues was such that it actually made me give concern about, if they're this difficult to work with to deal with these kind of issues, what's it going to be like for the student to be there? I actually counsel the student to reflect on the experience as a prospective student, what that might be like as an actual student. And again, that's to understand your student and how they might need to be led through the process. If you email a university and they get back to you quickly and can talk you through these issues, that's probably a sign that what the experience for your student is going to be like when you're there.
But it's two-way, right?
Yeah.
Because the university is becoming more international, they will fall into this. But again, because for you to help them get to that point, again, it's just that communication. Let's all do this together. That's kind of, I think, why we're all here, right?
Okay, we'll come here and then we'll come here. So.
Questions as well. I mean, the first one is, as you mentioned, that as of 2018, UK and Sweden is providing the centralized education system. So, do you have the information about the other countries as well? Like, if there are other countries, or how many countries provide the central education system?
That's it.
That's it.
This is the first one. The second one is, as you were telling that in Spain, the private universities provide the education in English, like IE universities. So, what are the other universities provide education in English?
I have to say, we are one of a kind. We're one of the only universities that teaches everything in English. However, there is a mix. You can go to a university that will have degrees in English, some degrees that are in Spanish, and some degrees where you can study and take electives in different languages as well. Carlos III. We have Theo, where I studied at, which is San Pablo. You can go in, study some programs in Spanish and some programs in English. Again, there's a huge mix. I think the students that are coming to IE are looking for English education because they don't have to speak any Spanish. They won't speak by the time they leave. And the other would be what I was looking for: immerse myself in Spanish and be around Spaniards and local and speaking as much Spanish as they possibly could.
And do you provide
100%. And again, I think that's the beauty of studying with any European university. You could be sitting with students who are saying, well, actually, I'm thinking of US, but I'm also thinking of Europe. While you're in Europe, you can spend a semester or a year abroad in the US and then do an internship in Australia, having studied in Spain. It's that global experience that all of our universities are trying to afford our students, but make them global citizens. Choose a country, but you're not bound by it.
Quick question. How is the demography there in your university? Demography as in international students coming from different... And the attendance percentages?
That's going to. I mean, we're talking about a massive country with all sorts of different, so continent with all sorts of different systems, and that is part of the choosing process that students should be aware of. Do you want to go to somewhere like an EHL and IE are very international universities? You go to a public university in Lithuania that's only offering one program in English, it's going to be 98% Lithuanian, and everything in between. So that's an important part of the sort of questions students should cover. Everything's in between. I'll flag up a website which I stupidly think I should have put on here. There isn't a comprehensive search engine for European degrees taught in English. There is a website called EUNICAS, EUNICAS. It's actually an Irish website which lists a lot of programs, but there is no comprehensive thing there. Ikenna said earlier, it depends. I'm afraid that's the cop-out answer to that question. It does depend. Yes, sir.
You haven't said anything about Germany, but we seem to have a lot of students who are interested in Germany. Do you have any quick words of advice or perhaps resources that you could share about Germany?
So the quick takeaway on Germany is Germany's in the news everywhere because it's free. There's very little undergraduate stuff in Germany taught in English that is free. There's some private options, Karl Benz School, which is part of European University Consortium, Otto Biesheim School of Management, ECLA in Germany. In the public universities, there's very, very little taught in English that's going to be free. And to get the Abitur equivalent is quite complicated of these kind of things.
Have someone from Jacobs.
Jacobs, yeah.
Are you from
Yes,
Jacobs?
yeah, Jacobs,
right.
Jacobs as well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
But to the public universities, it's out there in the media. It's a great place for master's programs taught in English and free. On the undergraduate level, if you've got a student if they want that German experience, go to Maastricht and somewhere you're 20 minutes from the German border, and it's a much easier process to do the Dutch one. I'm conscious we've probably got time for two questions. So. Scholarships. That's going to get different between private and public. I guess if you want to talk about JAB at IE.
Sure. There are opportunities available. It will be dependent on the university. It could be depending if they're coming from a great academic background, if they're coming to bring something new to the university, if they want to add their social aspect, create clubs. When you're looking at scholarships, many of the European universities will look at the whole profile of a student. Can they cope with the course content? But what will they bring? For IE, we have 70% of our students who are international. But that means, what are you bringing to that university to add to that student body? That will sometimes dictate scholarship opportunities. Does that make sense?
Public universities, because they're state funded by their government, can't politically give away money to people from other countries, but the tuition tends to be lower. So if you go to Belgium, regardless of whether you're EEA or not, it's €900 tuition. So there's no scholarship there. Last question.
So I have a Chinese student who's going to DE actually, and he's run into problems with just getting a visa.
Okay.
In terms of getting it from China, so he's
Okay.
having to come back to India to get it because as he got here, is that something that the universities can have a say in?
Well, yes, I mean, student officers and, again, local representatives. Coming to IE, you said?
Yeah.
We have an international office there. We should definitely put you in touch.
Thank you so much. I know we've given a water hose of information to you. We're around for questions in a few
We've got
minutes.
business cards.
And we have business cards. So thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.